start recording. So we'll have half a recording of this. So I'll have to actually go back and make sure I've nicely rounded up everything. So the fact that no one can hear you, that's just practice. That's just practicing getting your voice and using it to get across a room. Now, this one, that no one is interested in what you have to say, they wouldn't be there if they weren't interested in what you have to say. This isn't a situation where people have been strong-armed into going into a room or bribed in order for you to stand there and give them some information. In almost every instance, in fact, I'm going to say it 100% of the time, you are giving a presentation or a speech to a group of people who are there to hear what you have to say. They specifically want to hear what you have to say. So it's your job to give them the information they want. All right? So you need to lose that whole thing that no one is interested, because they are. They very much are interested, and they're on your side. Okay. So what do we fear most? Freezing in front of the crowd. Make sure you've got your own prompts and your own props that help you get started. And one of those things I do, as I said before, is I tend to step into me, the speaker. And that act of just stepping forward actually gets the brain engaged, because if you make a physical movement, the brain will follow suit and you lose that freezing. Forgetting what you are talking about. If you know your subject, you are the expert in your subject, and you have really done the preparation, you are not going to forget what you are talking about. You may forget the words within the speech, but you're not going to forget the actual subject you're talking about. Technology going wrong. Don't rely on your technology. Have a plan B, C, D, and E if you need to. Do not rely on technology. People have come to hear you speak. So speak, because that's what they want to hear. No one can hear you. That again is just practicing getting your voice to move across a room on the breath. It's not about shouting. It's not about pushing. It's about understanding the technique of the voice, how it works, and how the breath can take the voice and the speech and move it across the room, no matter how big it is. No one is interested in what you have to say. Get that one out of your head now. Lose that one, because people have come to hear what you've got to say. They signed up to hear what you have to say. So they really are interested in you and what you have to say. Now, if there's anything else that you really fear, pop it in the message box and we'll come back to it later, okay? So if there is anything I've missed there, but they were the sort of the top five that came up when I would talk to people on this one. So, how to deal with the fear. Now, this is going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour on how to deal with the fear, because, as I say, I am doing another webinar specifically on fear in a couple of weeks' time. But dealing with the fear really depends on what you fear, okay? So the thing is to try and work out what's really worrying you. It's not uncommon for you to have fear. Everyone who wants to stand up and do anything in front of an audience is going to be nervous. They are going to be frightened. I still feel it every time I step onto a stage. I feel it when I sit here and do a webinar with a group of people. And for me, this is slightly more difficult because I can't see you. I can't work this room like I would if I had people where I could see their eyes and see whether my voice was reaching them and whether they were understanding what I'm saying. So there is always an element of fear, but it is how you deal with it. And what I would say to you is, use the fear to your advantage. Don't stress about the fact that you have some fear. Use it for your adrenaline. Use it to help yourself calm down and breathe and be able to go and do what you do. Convince yourself that no matter how scared you are, when you get out there in front of that crowd and read that first line, that the nerves and the fear will actually dissipate. It will go away. Okay? So use your fear to your advantage. Now remember, you are not the only one. I come back to this. Anyone who does anything in public gets frightened, feels nervous, feels those butterflies. They just know how to deal with them better. They know how to fake that confident feel at the very beginning. Okay? Another thing you can do is turn that fear into passion. Use that same feeling that you feel when you get fearful and you get a bit all like this and drenched up and, oh, what am I going to do? And the voice starts squeaking. Try to turn that into being really passionate about what you are talking about. Use those fears and those nerves to really connect with what you're saying and give that message to the audience. Okay? And if it's something like technology or about learning a script word for word, do not rely on the thing that scares you. So don't rely on the technology. Don't necessarily learn a speech word for word. I don't do that. I will scribble out a structure. I will have cue cards, but I don't learn a whole speech unless when I'm in Toastmasters and we do competition, then we have to write a script and we have to follow that speech through. So then it's slightly different. But for you, it may be that you just need to have your cue cards, and the fact that you're frightened of remembering a whole speech, then don't try and remember a whole speech. Okay? Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Passion will always carry you forward because people like to listen to someone who's passionate about what they're talking about. And I question anybody that does a presentation or a speech about something they are not interested in or don't have a passion for. So if somebody's asked you to do a presentation and actually you have no real connection to the subject, then you might want to ask yourself why you would be doing it in the first place. What public speaking really is. Now, people never stop and think about what the job is of the public speaker. They've been asked to do a presentation, they've been asked to do a speech, they go home in like a jelly state, they start writing down their notes, they start trying to pull something together. But do you really know what public speaking really is? What is your job when you're presenting? What your job is, so that was good grammar, wasn't it? What your job is, sorry about that. The job you have is to give a message to an audience. It is to ensure that that audience goes away with whatever it is you wanted to tell them. And the hardest thing for this is when you have a technical speech, scientists or people that have technical stuff. It's quite dry. You have to make sure that your audience have gone away with what it was you wanted to tell them. And you can fluff that up with all sorts of humour, all sorts of whizzy gadgets and video. But if they don't get the message, you haven't done your job. The other thing public speaking is, it's a conversation with a bigger crowd. So you may be in a job or a career where you have to do a presentation, and you probably have that conversation with somebody in the office or a friend or a partner many times and got really passionate in this conversation in the pub about what you really believe in. And it may be, you know, that you're really into environmental projects and you're absolutely hot and passionate about our environment and how people need to save it, and you have that conversation over a pint in a pub with mates. Well, public speaking's really having that conversation, but with a bigger crowd. You are talking to a lot more people. And the other thing to remember is that there may be 200-300 people plus listening to you. But actually, each individual, they are only one person listening to you. So you have to get your head around that. To them in the audience, they're the one person listening to you. So you could look at it, you are talking to one person, there just seems to be a lot of them out there. Know what the message is. I keep going over and over and over this because so often when I coach people, they do not understand this idea about knowing what the message is. So I keep coming back to that one. And the other thing is generally it's not about you. It's not about you, the individual, unless you're talking about you and you happen to be the person the presentation is about. But that's quite rare. It's generally about whatever that message is, whatever it is you're trying to tell people. You are just a messenger. So it's not about you. So, building your self-confidence. It's really, really important that you learn to build your self-confidence, because the more confident you are when you're doing your speaking and your presenting, and you don't fall over your words like I just did. Yes, Sam, knowing your audience. That's a good one actually to add in, and it's not one I covered, but you do need to know your audience. Often if you're going to a conference about a particular subject, say for instance health, you are going to know the majority of your audience are health workers. Or if you're going to a building trade conference or you're doing a presentation to a particular industry. The other thing is often people will just be presenting a new idea, but Sam's absolutely right. Knowing your audience and how they are likely to react. For instance, if all your audience are scientific or academic, then they're not going to particularly want a one-man comedy show from you, the speaker. They are going to want to have the facts. They are going to want to know that what you are telling them is correct, it makes sense, and they can take it away. Equally, I have done some presentations recently to residents in a housing scheme, and some of the information we needed to pass on to them was quite dry and quite difficult, so we turned it much more into a fun, interactive presentation that people could have some fun with, and we had some jokes thrown in, that sort of thing, because the audience were a completely different, receptive group than they would have been otherwise. So Sam's right, you must also know your audience, so make sure that whatever the presentation is, and this is something I'll get on to, it's about making sure you know your room, knowing your audience, knowing what you're talking about, and understanding how you're going to put that across. They're very important. And some of that stuff I will do in other webinars in much more detail. But thank you, Sam. Well done there. I had completely missed out on the Know Your Audience. So busy was I concentrating on you, the speakers. So I'm just going to have a slurp of tea. Okay. So building your self-confidence. Firstly, I would suggest that, and I haven't put it on here because I don't like to push people, but I think if you have a Toastmasters group near you, or a way to actually go and do some public speaking workshops, you will begin to understand the whole thing around putting your speech together, how to stand and get it across, how to own the room, breathing, the technical stuff of it. And that is very, very useful. So if you do get an opportunity to do that, then that's what you need to do. And equally, you can always come to me. I do private work and I do online stuff. But I'm just saying, if there's something close by you or a Toastmasters group you would like to join, that's a great way to build your confidence. Practice helps. And again, if you're doing workshops and you're doing a Toastmasters thing, you get to practice in really safe environments. You get to stand up and learn to just speak. I used to work with children and adults, and we used to throw subjects at them, and they would just have to talk for an hour. Can you imagine them talking for an hour, a minute on a particular subject like sugar mice or blue moons? And it was quite funny that children would just go into it without a thought because they weren't trying to think whether it was right or not. They would just talk. And adults really struggled with this, just being able to talk off the top of their head. So working with a group that does that is really, really good practice to learn how to just keep the brain working. So when things go wrong, you are flexible enough to just jump in there and keep it going. Okay. So practice, practice, practice. Something I've started telling people recently is if you have like video recording on your computer or audio or YouTube, absolutely, is record yourself and watch it. Don't worry about how your voice sounds. It never sounds the same to you as it does to anybody else. But watch your recording. Watch how fast you may talk. Watch how flexible your voice is, how you use words and inflection and things like that, and whether listening back you think, God, I'm really boring, or actually surprise yourself and realize you're actually quite an exciting speaker. And creating YouTube videos is a great idea, Sam. I often do things just on my own video recording on the computer, so there's no chance of anybody else looking at it, and I can go through it and then I can delete it and do others. And I think if you are seriously wanting to build up those skills, then technology today is a great way to do it. Using your nerves, really what I'm trying to say there is, do not beat yourself up because you are nervous. Don't worry about the fact that you have those nerves. Use them. Understand that everybody does, and use them and calm them and let them help you. And more on that in a couple of weeks if you want to sign up for that one on just the using, working with your fear and things like that. This one I cannot. You've got a thicker skin than me, Sam. Sometimes I'm happy to do it at times. I think especially in competition times I tend to keep them a little bit to myself. And yeah, well done there. I think I have to go over and have a listen to some of yours. Yeah, but knowing your stuff, I can't, I cannot emphasize this enough. I am always amazed at somebody that puts a presentation on and I say to them, how much preparation did you do? And they said, oh, well, I knocked it together last night. If you truly want to lose at least 75% of your nerves, know your stuff. I can't emphasize that enough. Do your research. Know your facts and your figures. Know that if you are using PowerPoint, everything up there, you know it inside out. And if the PowerPoint stops working and the mic stops working, the word happens, you know your stuff. Okay? You can't forget what you're talking about if you know your stuff. Even if you forget your speech, you'll be able to pick up the subject. So I will always shout that one from the rooftops. It's going dry now. Know your stuff. You're the expert. You are giving this information to an audience. It is your job to know your stuff. You're not just filling in 15 minutes because the conference couldn't find a different speaker. You're not talking to an audience who came along because they had nothing better to do and somebody promised them a bacon sandwich. They're coming to listen to you tell them something important. So know your stuff. This thing about self-talk, I am, in one of my many other guises, I'm an NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Program Master Practitioner. And I do a lot of work with people on self-talk. The more you tell yourself you can't do something, the more you won't do it. That's fact. That's not any sort of mystic voodoo. That's fact. If you tell yourself constantly you can do it and keep practicing it and keep doing it, you will be good at it, because that's the way it works. You convince the brain, the neurons in your brain, that you know what you're doing, and the brain just follows suit. So you are in control. So self-talk for me is incredibly important. Every time you hear yourself going, I can't do that, I can't talk in public, I hate talking in public, shut the self-talk down and say it in a different way and accept the challenge. And the other thing I want to say to you is about practicing on others. If you've got to do a speech and a presentation that worries you, practice on your friends. Drive your family mad. Just keep doing it until you don't know anything else. You know it inside out. Know your stuff. Okay? Practice on others. Keep practicing. And know that you are always going to be nervous, but you can use those nerves. And never allow yourself to say, I can't do public speaking. Just refuse to listen to that word or that phrase. Now, Sam has mentioned this, and I've mentioned this bringing passion to public speaking. And it's interesting because you get up there and you're really scared and you look like a deer in the headlights and your eyes have gone wide and you're stiff from head to toe. And then there's someone like me saying, no, bring passion to public speaking. Be passionate about what you're talking about. And I've been in workshops and people have just looked at me through gritted teeth going, I can barely speak, let alone bring any passion. Passion is what sells what you're talking about. Passion will engage your audience with you. And once you've engaged your audience, they will let you get away with anything. You don't have to worry so much if you fluff a few lines or the technology goes wrong, because you have the audience in the palm of your hands, because they are riding on your tide of passion. However, you can't have passion unless you believe in what you're saying. You have to believe passionately in what you're talking about. And if your presentation, when you're looking at it and you're preparing it, doesn't raise any passionate levels in you, go back and find another way to say it. The public will root for you because they're there to listen to you. But I think Sam could have done this presentation a lot better than I could. You have to believe that the audience are there because they want to hear what you want to say. Otherwise they wouldn't come. I'm not going to go to a speech given to me by some right-wing racist group because I don't want to listen to it. I absolutely don't. So I just wouldn't go. And in the same way, if you're doing a speech on love and harmony, for instance, those people who are interested in love and harmony are going to come and listen to you because they want to learn something new. They want to be involved in what you are talking about. So, thank you, Sam. So, bring that passion into your voice. And as I say, during your preparation, you're reading your speech or your presentation and you're not feeling it, go back and prepare some more because you have to believe in what you're saying. You need to share your passion with the audience. And what you should remember is if you like your audience, they will like you. That it's your job to like them first, because your job is to give them the message. Okay, the audience have come in, they want to hear, but they're just sitting back a bit. You know, there's probably a little bit of reticence. It may be the third day of the conference and the fifth speech they've gone to that week. So there's a little bit of reticence from an audience. So it's your job to like them and believe in them and what you're saying and give them what they want to hear. Okay? And that's when we come back to this, know what your message is. And within you, there is a great speaker. There is a great speaker in all of us. We were born to speak. This isn't something that we are not naturally doing. Okay? I can tell you there is not a great skier in me. I will never go skiing. I don't think I could stand on 2 thin planks of wood. I wasn't born to ski. But every human being in the world is born to speak. And it is only our own self-doubt that stops us being able to speak to more than 2 or 3 people at a time. So inside you, there is a great speaker. You just need to identify with the great speaker that is inside of you. So when you bring that passion to public speaking, bring it into your voice. If you believe in what you are saying and you are truly passionate about what you're saying, the passion will naturally come into your voice. And then you need to share that passion with the audience through that message that you are giving them. Because you have identified the great speaker in you. The inner critic. That's what I say about self-talk, Sam. Don't listen to the inner critic. Okay, just keep telling yourself you are a great speaker because you were born to speak. We're all born to speak. Okay. So it's really a case of going out there and doing it. Sometimes you can read all the books and do all the theory. You can listen to every webinar I do. You could come to every workshop I do. But at some point, you have to stand in front of an audience and do it. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to share with you was just some of the little tricks I use. And I'm not giving away all my secrets because I quite like the idea that you'll come to another webinar. If you get stuck, this is a tip. If you suddenly feel your brain is it's sort of freezing up a little, getting a little woolly during a speech, or something happens in an audience that just sort of knocks you off a bit, move. That sounds silly. Take a step. So many people don't use the space that they have on a stage, and that's a whole other webinar about how you use the space, how you know, the whole sort of body language thing, what you do with your arms. But if you feel you suddenly get yourself stuck, take a step, even if it's a step forward or a step back. But physically moving tricks the brain into sort of getting back on track. It unsticks it. So one of my tips is, if you do feel yourself getting a little bit, I don't know what's coming next, take a breath, take a pause, and take a step. And that will help. Pausing. It's really interesting. When I first started doing this, people used to say to me that I talked too fast, and I know one of my challenges is to slow down from time to time because I want to give so much to people that I tend to rush ahead. And pausing is so important when you want someone to really understand the last statement. Give them the pause, because then they can take it in and digest it. And it gives you time to maybe go back and just double check your cards. But you're handing your audience the space to digest what you've just said. And if it's really important, like my statement of know your stuff, then giving it a little pause makes it really important. The trick is knowing how long that pause is. So if you want to use pauses and you want to practice, that's a really good time to record something and really know how long that pause is, because trust me, you'll never know when you're stood on a stage. It will always seem a lot longer than it is. And pausing is better than although you'll never ever get rid of the but I tend to say to people, don't worry about it too much at this stage, because the more you worry about going or the more you'll do it. So I tend to say to people, leave that one to the one side. There are exercises we can do to get people to stop doing that. But it's absolutely right. If you're beginning to go a bit, I don't know what's coming next, pausing. And people like you to pause. People don't mind quietness in a conference. They like to have the time to think about what it was you were saying. Now this one might seem a bit obvious. Breathing gets you through it. Again, I've worked with people who try to say the whole sentence in one breath, because if they get it done fast enough, then they won't have to think again and they won't have to breathe again, and everybody's going, ugh! Yes, Jinx, too many ums will drive you crazy, but we have to teach people how not to do them, which is why the pause works better. And actually, the breathing, don't go too fast, slow it down, and take a breath at the end of a sentence. Begin your speech with a breath, because it's the breath that takes the voice from the diaphragm. It doesn't come from the lungs up here, it comes from the diaphragm, and the breath will take it and it will bring it up and it will take the voice out as far as you need it to go. So breathing is actually incredibly important if you really want to train your voice to be able to get through and across to a lot of people. Linda Day Harrison, hello. Timing and rambling is my pain. I am so nervous that I ramble and lose track of time. In competition, funny enough, Linda, we get timed for every speech we do, and you watch these little lights come on and off, and I understand that completely, because I've had to discipline myself around time. And when the rambling thing is, I come back to know your stuff and know your subject and structure your speech so you know what your beginning and your middle is going to be. You absolutely have to know how you're going to end it, how you're going to wrap up everything you've said and give it in a lovely, neat parcel to your audience to take away with them. And we're going to do some work on structuring speeches, because, again, if you have a structure to your speech and you know exactly which bit goes where, you'll be less inclined to ramble, no matter how nervous you are, because you'll be using your nerves in order to get that breath out. So that's an interesting one. I've been there and done that, rambling. Facing your audience with confidence. Now, faking it is not something I don't like to say to people, fake it to make it, because I believe that if you're up there doing a speech or a presentation, it's because you know what you're talking about, and the audience don't deserve you to be making it up or faking it. However, being able to stand there with the look that you are confident, and this is an NLP trick, the body will take on an assumption. So if you stand and your shoulders are down and your head is up and your body physically is in a confident pose, the brain will take on a confident stance, because the brain will recognize that physical reaction as, I know what's coming next and I know I can do it. So there is a thing around, stand with confidence, stand there and take that breath and give yourself time before you start your speech. And if you're standing confidently, the voice will feel confident. You can't talk confidently if the head's down, because you're shutting off all the vocal cords here. You're shutting off the breath. If you truly want to get that voice across, you have to open the chest. You have to lift the head to give the voice room to come out and flow across an audience. So it's quite a technical thing. So face your audience with confidence. And then, I'm sorry, you just have to do it. At some point, you have to open your mouth and just do it. And if you can ensure that you have done your preparation, you know your stuff inside and out, you know your room, you know what your audience want from you and how they want to receive it. That's what Sam said about knowing your audience. You know what your message is. The rest becomes easier. Because the only thing you've got to worry about then is, I'm just nervous about talking in front of people. I know everything else, but that's okay because everybody gets nervous and I'm going to use those nerves and it's going to be great. So you just have to do it. So I'm now going to ask you, who knows the message in Humpty Dumpty? Anybody come up with a message for Humpty Dumpty? It's quite funny, I did this with the group recently and I had about 7 different messages, which is fine. There's no right or wrong answer to this one. Pick yourself up and keep going. Could be Sam. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Stay off walls. Yes, never put an egg on a wall. So let's take those two. It's a message from Humpty Dumpty. Be careful. Yes, Fiona, be careful on those walls. So whatever you've decided that message is, if you go back to all those things we've talked about, and your presentation is pick yourself up and keep going, or stay off walls, or be careful, you take that Humpty Dumpty nursery rhyme and decide to use that as your presentation. You have to know what that message is in order to get that across, because if it's about staying off walls, then your whole presentation would be around, well, Humpty Dumpty sat on that wall, but he fell off. That's what happens when you go on walls. You fall off. Equally, the pick yourself up and keep going. He fell off the wall. Nobody else could help him get it together again, all those horses and king's men. He had to do it himself. Hold on tight. There are a number of messages that nursery rhyme could have. But you have to know which one you're picking in order to give that to the audience. So do you want your audience to go away thinking, right, I know now how to pick myself up and do it myself and keep going? Or do you want them to walk away again, I'm going to keep well away from walls, I'm not going anywhere near walls, I'm going to be really careful, I'm going to hold them tight. They need to know what they're going away with. And that will depend on your audience, the message again. That's why I say you must know your message. So, questions. Do we have any questions out there from anyone that I can help with? And I'm quite happy to turn your mic on and you can talk to all of us. I think I can do that. Put your hand up if you wish to ask a question. Jinx is raising his hand. I now have to find you, Jinx. Here we go. I'm going to undo your mic. You should be able to talk to us now, Jinx. Can you? Oh, I can't hear you there. Right, okay. Oh, right. I'm going to type in the answer for you, Jinx, okay? You can have more than one message. Be careful that you don't have too many. Don't worry, Sam, I'll talk to you about that in a minute, the links. Yeah, Jinx, you can have more than one message. You have to be careful you don't have so many messages. Say, for instance, let's go back to Humpty Dumpty. And we're saying, okay, the message is picking yourself up and keep going, yet stay off walls, all of that. I would say that you can have up to 3, but they have to be linked. They can't be 3 completely separate messages because your audience are going to go away confused. The last thing you want is for your audience to leave a room going, well, I have no idea what that was about. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do now. Let me just see if I can get Linda Day. She's raising her hand. Linda, can you hear me? Can you answer, Linda? I've unmiked you. No, well, there you go. Technology not working at its best. So I'll come back to you, Linda. You may not have a mic on in yours either. So back to those messages. 3 tops. They must link because the audience have to go away understanding what it is you're saying to them. So you may be saying to them, look, you have to be very careful on walls. It's a hold on tight, and if I were you, I would just not go near a wall. However, if you have to go near a wall and you do fall off, then it's up to you to pick yourself up and keep going. Because if you don't, then all that will happen is, all these people will come around you and try to... Does that make sense, Jinx, about having more than one message? You can, but you have to be careful that they link, and no more than 3, otherwise people get really confused, okay?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'll come back to you in a minute, Jinx. Linda, yes, you had a question. Go on, Linda.
Well, I just physically get scared. So it's more physical for me, and then I kind of like freak myself out because I'm so scared. And then it's just, I don't know, I guess it's anxiety.
It's perfect. It's absolutely natural. A lot of people, it's quite interesting because you can go from just having a few nerves to almost a phobia about standing in front of an audience. And I've spoken to actors who have actually been sick before they've gone on stage. So they've got to a point where they accept that, so they just have a bucket in the wings and then they go on stage and then they're fine. I think when you have quite a severe fear of public speaking, what you have to do is work on trying to understand exactly where that fear is coming from and what's triggering it. And to accept that the chances are you may never get rid of it completely, but you'll learn how to control it. And what I would suggest to you is in a couple of weeks, there's another free one I'm doing purely on fear and how to overcome some of it and some of that physical stuff that happens. And the whole session will just be around how to deal with the fear of public speaking. So it might be worth, if you haven't yet, just sign on for that one. That's another freebie. And we will go through some of the techniques, and a lot of what I call the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, is really, really helpful for people that physically get scared. I worked with a gentleman once who had the same issue, and we did like a negotiation with him. So he would have a negotiation with himself and himself, the speaker, that if he could go on and do it, he was allowed to come off at the end and be sick. And that seemed to work for him, because he sort of gave himself permission to come off afterwards and do all the sickness then, so long as he got through it. Yeah. So there are techniques we can look at, and I would urge you to join that one, the freebie one, and we'll look at how it can affect people physically and how you deal with that. Okay?
Well, thank you, because I will definitely listen to that one.
Not a problem at all. I'm just going to come back to Jinx. I'm going to turn you off again, Linda, so I don't get too confused. Jinx, the thing about exposing a problem and solving a problem. There are very few presentations or speeches that I can think of. Actually, I'm going to say very few presentations, let's start with presentations, that do not work to identify a problem and solve it, unless you are just giving an evaluation of something that's happened. But even then, you are telling people how you solved the problem. People want to know something. They want to go away knowing something or being told to do something. So if you can put your presentation into a way that it does identify a problem and gives a solution to a problem, you have given your audience something amazing to go away with, especially within an industry. When it comes to speeches, keynote speeches, things like that, tend to be a setup in terms of starting a conference or giving information in such a way you're almost patting yourself on the back, if you like. That's slightly different because what you're doing is giving people a story. Okay, that's why when I talk about structure, you're giving your audience a story. So when they go away, they know the story. They know how an industry got started. They know how you became famous. They know how. So Fiona. Could it have happened and could it have been avoided? And actually, Fiona, I'm going to answer your question in terms of jinxes. Should you expose a problem? Well, if you're doing a presentation about Humpty Dumpty, there is a big problem about putting a round object on a wall because the chances are it will fall off. Now, the presentation could solve the problem by saying if you padded it out at the bottom or put him in an egg cup, he wouldn't have fallen off the wall. So people go away thinking, okay, now I know not to put an egg on a wall and we can do all this and it'll be perfect. That's fine. There will be a recording, so hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Yes, we are coming now to the end. We were on our hour, and I like to sort of keep it to that level. If you go to, there is in a couple of weeks' time, there is going to be the workshop, the seminar on fear, and that's a freebie. I've also started a 6-part bootcamp series, and I will put the link into the BigMarker. That's okay, Sam, thank you. I will put that link where you can see it. There is a cost on that one, but as I say, they are very small groups, and we will be working with people individually to make sure that they really get to grips with what they need to know. I want to thank everybody that turned up today. Hope you enjoyed it. I would ask that you could give a really good, if you enjoyed it that is, mention for me so that other people will join us as well. And hopefully I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, thank you and bye.